He specializes in constitutional law, the United States Supreme Court, and the intersection between law and technology. He's the author of the critically acclaimed Unprecedented, the Constitutional Challenge to Obamacare, and Unraveled, Obamacare, Religious Liberty, and Executive Power. Josh was selected by Forbes magazine for 30 Under 30 in law and policy, and he has twice testified before the House Judiciary Committee on constitutionality of executive action on immigration and healthcare. He's an adjunct scholar at the Cato Institute as well, and he is the founder and president of the Harlan Institute, the founder of Fantasy SCOTUS, the internet's premier Supreme Court fantasy league, if anyone's interested.
Should all play.
And blogs at joshblackman.com. He's the author of 4 dozen law review articles, and his commentary has appeared in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, USA Today, LA Times, and other national publications. He's going to speak to you today on First Amendment, Second Amendment, 3D printed guns. And please welcome Mr. Joshua Blackman.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's so good to be here at St. John's. I am from Staten Island, so this is very, very close to home for me. So the topic today that we announced is a little bit different than we talk about, but we'll get there eventually. And the topic focuses on how the Constitution protects data, how the Constitution protects information. And I want to talk about this topic in a specific context: 3D printed guns. Now, this is not really about guns. It's about the information used to print those weapons. Let's start off at a basic level. Who here has ever actually used a 3D printer? Professor Barrett, yes. What did you make? A Robert Jackson bust? No, sorry, I couldn't help it.
I have a friend who's an inventor and a patent holder. I got a tour of his factory. So they were cranking out all kinds of things on the machines.
Oh, that's very cool. That's very cool. Anyone else? What'd you make? So another hand. Yeah, over there.
Various proteins.
Proteins. Oh, that's pretty sophisticated. Well, that's very cool. What kind of proteins did you make?
It was for undergrad, so I don't remember all the stuff we did. It was a while.
Okay, well, very cool. Anyone else? Okay, usually people say like ashtrays and keychains, but 3D printing is a way to design an object on a computer and then create it in reality. You can make proteins, you can make keychains, you can make design of a car, you can even design an entire house. The idea is you tell the computer what you want to make, and the printer then produces it. So let's start with a very brief lesson in coding, right, of how to actually code a 3D printer. This is very easy. You don't need to know much math. Think back to your high school geometry days, right? If I want to make a cylinder, right, like this bottle of water, right? I want to make a cylinder with a height of 20 and a radius of 5, right? So 20 inches tall, 5 inches wide. I tell the computer, make a cylinder with a height of 20 and a radius of 5. That's all you need to know. You can program a 3D printer in language that's easy to understand and just about anyone can figure out. And then once you have the right code developed, the 3D printer can then go to work and spit out objects, a pair of sunglasses, little chess pieces, whatever else you want to make. You can make things of different colors, different shapes, different transparencies. This is what a 3D printer looks like. You can see it's printing actually a race car in this shot. You can also use a 3D printer to print out pieces of human anatomy, like a human brain or a bust or anything else you want to create. Okay. How does a 3D printer work? It works very much like making a candle. Has everyone made a candle before? Right? You know how to make a candle? Okay, so what do? You take the wick, you dip in the wax, you pull it out, right? You dip in the wax, you pull it out. You keep dipping it. And every time you dip the wax, it gets a little thicker around the base, right? 3D printing works in the same way. But instead of dipping a wick into wax, instead you spray. You spray a very thin layer of plastic, one layer on top of the other, on top of the other. Here they're printing a ball. So you spray a little bit, spray a little bit more, spray a little bit more, and you can actually make a fully formed sphere. This shows it from a different angle. You actually have to heat the bed underneath and spit out the plastic. This little nozzle moves around. The same way if you have an old school printer that sort of moves back and forth, 3D printers work in the same way. But instead of spitting out ink, it spits out plastic. Okay, now I want to show you a demonstration of printing a real life object using a 3D printer. You're going to see what it is in a few seconds, but I don't want to give it away. I want you to guess, right? When you see what it is, I want you to raise your hand, okay? All right. So this is number 1. They put down the first layer, the sort of honeycomb lattice, right? Like a beehive almost. It's a very strong material. Okay, so this is number 1. This is number 2. This is number 3. This is number 4. Number 5. Anyone see it yet? What?
It's a bust.
It's a bust, good. A bust of
A jacket.
a jacket, okay. Anyone else? That's 5. Number 6. Usually people get it at 6. Frog, very close. You're on the right track. That's number 6. No? 7. See, a little bit more is added. Number 7. Anyone see it yet? No? Mr. Toad, you're really close. It's a Disney character. I'll give you another hint. A new Disney character, or a new old Disney character. I don't know how to describe it. Okay? Number 8. No? Oh, come on. Number 9. Muppet, you're close. No? Number 10. Yoda. Oh my God. Yes, Yoda from Star Wars, which is a Disney character. It looks like a toad. I'm trying to help you out, guys. Right? It's Yoda from Star Wars. Okay, so 10, 11. Now you see it, right? 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 17, and this is the last shot. They clean off the head, done, right? You could print this maybe at 15 or 20 minutes, depending on the size of the bust. Now, I'm not artistic, maybe you are. If you gave me a block of clay and asked me to mold that, no way, right? If you gave me a piece of stone and you asked me to chisel that, no way. If you gave me a thing of wood and asked me to carve that, no way. If you gave me a piece of paper and asked me to draw it, I can't do it. But 3D printing allows people who are not artistically inclined to develop their ideas on a computer and then let the technology bring it to life. You can put together some pretty sophisticated gears and products using 3D printing. But that's not why I'm here, right? I wouldn't be giving a talk if people were 3D printing Yodas. That's not why the law is involved. The law is involved because people decide to print guns. Or more precisely, print the parts to make a gun. The gun is basically the sum of all its parts, like most things are, so you have different parts to assemble the gun. And the very first 3D printed gun was created in 2013, and it was known as the Liberator. What's this? This is the blueprints, the schematics for the barrel of a gun, right? It's round, cylinder, little hole in the middle where the bullet pops out of. I played a trick on you before. I showed you how to code a cylinder. I showed you how to code a barrel for a gun. It's quite simple and easy to develop this code. Now, making a functional gun, different story. But the basic geometry of a gun is basically a round tube and a couple other pieces. I know about this case very intimately because I represent them. I've been the lawyer for the company that makes these things, Defense Distributed. I've been their attorney since 2014 or 2015 now, almost 5 years. They put together a lot of devices. They developed this, which is a 3D printed receiver for an AR-15. This is the guts that makes an AR-15 work. Federal law is funny. When you have an AR-15 or most guns, the government only cares about one part. You can basically buy 99% of the parts in the mail. And there's one part called the receiver, which the government wants to know about. But under federal law, you can make your own receiver. And now you can 3D print your own receiver, assemble the other parts, and now you have a fully functional AR-15. They also developed a magazine, right? That's the box that holds the bullets. All things that your state likes to ban. I don't live here anymore, thankfully. They developed a magazine that can hold more than 15 rounds. But what put defense distributed on the map internationally was this. Josh, what the heck is this? What are these little squigglies, right? These are all the individual parts used to 3D print a gun. The blue thing is the handles, what you hold. These little squiggly things, those are the springs that you pull back. Okay? This is the receiver, the frame. Right over here, that's the barrel of the gun. It's all plastic with the exception of number 1, a nail, and number 2, a bullet. Yes, plastic guns fire metal bullets. They are metal. They will be detected. I'll get back to that point later. This is what the Liberator looks like when it's fully assembled. It's a pretty awful gun. I'm assuming most of you have never actually touched a gun. I never did until I left New York. But this is not a good gun. Plastic has very poor qualities. When plastic gets hot, it melts. When plastic cools down, then it cracks. This is not a good way to make a gun. Steel is unique. When it gets hot, it expands. When steel gets cool, it contracts. That's a basic principle of steel. In fact, when this gun was first assembled, the first few rounds would blow up in the chamber. In fact, you see this rope over here? The reason why there was a rope is they would actually tie the trigger to a rope, stand very far away, and pull it so they wouldn't blow up in their hands. It's not point, click, shoot. You actually need to treat this plastic with a chemical bath so it's strong enough to withstand the combustion. It might take you an entire week and a lot of really expensive equipment to print this gun that might last you one shot. Okay? And I've been working on this case now 5 years. The technology hasn't gotten any better. Plastic sucks, right? It's an inherent limitation of plastic that's not going to withstand heat. So if you want to make a gun, you're not going to do this, but this technology exists. The 3D printed gun came out. It made international waves. All right. So is there a problem? Okay. Are there any legal problems with printing these devices for your own use? Well, generally, when I say 3D printed guns, this is what people think of, right? You just click print and a gun pops out. Not quite. There's a lot more work involved. But I want to show you how easy it is to make a gun at home. I don't have any with me. Lord help me. Andrew Cuomo, I'll talk to him later. But he would not be happy. Let's talk about zip guns. Anyone know what a zip gun is? See, I'm in New York. I have to remember. A zip gun is a homemade gun. It is so easy to make your own weapon. What is this? This is a garden hose nozzle and a soldering iron. I can go down to Home Depot, buy $15 worth of parts, and make a fully functional weapon. Easy. Piece of cake, right? And this is a heck of a lot more effective than a plastic gun. It actually works. I found these blueprints on the internet. This is a keychain flashlight that was hollowed out and replaced with the guts of a gun. It's a flashlight, keychain. Looks like a gun. Let me show you the coup de grace. Now, please, do not try this at home. This is a demonstration. Do not try this at home. These guys in the garage with a flip phone, right? They made a rifle out of a rubber tube and a metal pipe. That's it. They have a rubber tube and a metal pipe. So look what they do. On the end of this metal pipe, there's this little dimple, right? A little protrusion. And what they're going to do is they're going to slide a red shotgun shell into the rubber tube, and they're going to jam the metal pipe into the back of the shotgun shell. Now, what's wrong with this picture? A lot of things, right? What's wrong with this picture? Yeah?
His hands on that.
Okay, so first off, his hand's in front of the damn gun, right? Don't do that, right? Don't do that. Pretend every single gun is loaded and it's going to kill you. Don't do this, okay. What else is wrong with this picture? It's a really obvious one, yeah. They're shooting a shotgun inside into a box, and let me one-up you. Behind the box are electrical cables running to a fan. Okay, these guys are morons, right? They're idiots. The reason why I show you this is to teach you how easy it is to make a lethal weapon at home. How straightforward it is to make a gun that's far more effective. And rubber, like plastic, is not detectable in a metal detector. The paranoia about 3D printed guns is based people have no idea how easy it is to make a gun. You're going to spend $40,000 on a 3D printer and a week of labor, or these guys with a couple beers in their garage, right? Anyway, they fire it. Ready? 3, 2, 1, boom. Lethal weapon. Lethal weapon. They didn't kill themselves because the next shot they were bragging about how they have this little smoky cartridge that comes out. But they did it, and they made a weapon. Now, did these guys break the law? I will table for a second whether this jurisdiction has a law about firing a gun inside. It probably does. That's actually not very important for me. My question is, was it a crime to make the weapon itself? That is, to put the pipe and the shotgun shell and the metal pipe together. The short answer under federal law is no. Our good friends at the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives have said, so long as you make the gun for your own use and it's not a machine gun or short-barreled shotgun, you're fine. Don't sell it, right? Once you go into the stream of commerce, you need a license. It's very cumbersome, but you can make your own weapon, right? You can make your own weapon. So if it's legal to make your own rubber gun, then what about plastic guns? Well, the government isn't concerned about my client actually printing them. He doesn't actually do that. What he does is he distributes the information needed to make the guns, right? This case presents directly the question of what First Amendment protections are given to data, to information, to code, right? And this is a question that the courts have grappled with, not just in the context of 3D printed guns, but in lots of contexts. For example, are Google's search results protected by free speech, right? The results appear on your screen based on some algorithm we never see. If the government wants to regulate Google and tell them you need to be more fair with how you rank people, is that a violation of the First Amendment, right? Are Twitter's timelines, right, where they display some tweets and not others, if they, shadow ban people? If the state tries to restrict how Twitter manages their social network, can Twitter assert a First Amendment right? The issues that I'm presenting in this case are not limited to guns, and I want everyone to realize that. They extend very far to issues that affect all of us. And it's easy to say, oh, Josh, guns are bad, plastic guns, who cares? If the states are able to restrict what files we put on the internet, then they can also restrict other files you might like and other networks which you might like. Okay, so let's just go over some basic law. The foundation of our modern free speech jurisprudence is that the government cannot impose what's called a prior restraint of speech, right? They can't generally stop you from speaking in advance. There's some very narrow exceptions to that doctrine, okay? Another basic principle of free speech is that the government generally cannot impose what's called a content-based restriction. That is, where they restrict the speech based on its content. That's afforded what's called strict scrutiny, which as a general matter means the government's going to lose. Okay, so how does this apply to our case? States have banned code. Actually, not states, it's just New Jersey at this point, but others will follow. But at least New Jersey has passed a law that makes it a crime to share information, files, that express certain kinds of information because they argue can then be used to make an illegal gun. Okay. Now, let me make one point very clear. We have no problem at this point with the state making it a crime to print your own weapon. We've never actually asserted a right to make your own weapon in court. We think it probably exists, but we haven't litigated this issue yet. Our entire case to date has focused on efforts to ban the sharing of the information used to make those guns. All right, so you might say, wait a minute, Josh, free speech, that's great, right, whatever. But people are using this code to make dangerous, illegal plastic guns, right? The speech itself might be harmless, but if put in the wrong hands, people can do really bad things with it. To which I would flash back to a book you're probably all familiar with, which is the Anarchist Cookbook. There's a fairly long tradition of governments trying to ban information that can be used to harm others. And generally the courts say that you can't do this. The mere fact that someone can take information, adapt it, use it, etc., doesn't mean you can ban it. Now, if I gave you step-by-step instructions of how to assassinate someone, right? Meet him here, go over here, do this, or this, I think it'd be a different story. I think that my speech in that case probably would be integral to criminal conduct, right? Do you have a right intent requirement? You did it intentionally or deliberately. Merely publishing a book or putting files on the internet, that's passive, right? And there's not enough of a mens rea, an intent requirement, to justify that prohibition. Now I may say, wait a minute, Josh, there's a difference between a book like the Anarchist Cookbook and code, right? This is just point, click, shoot. Well, not exactly. Information is speech, whether you use a computer or pen and paper. And the Supreme Court has held that the creation and dissemination of information are speech, right? There's a right of the speaker and the listener. It's a two-way street. We're surrounded by code, and whatever sort of ruling the court reaches in our case, I think will spill over into many other facets where speech and data and First Amendment collide. Now, we started with the First Amendment. The Second Amendment also plays a role here. Not as big of a role, but I think it does play a role. The Second Amendment provides a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Right? The Supreme Court has only addressed this provision in two big cases, maybe a third next year, we'll see. The first was called D.C. v. Heller, and the court held that the Second Amendment protects a right to own a handgun in the home. And a couple years later, they had McDonald v. City of Chicago, which held that the right to keep and bear arms also is protected by the 14th Amendment, and that the states cannot violate this provision. So both the federal and the state governments are bound by the Second Amendment. The court hasn't said much more than that, but I'd like to offer two arguments about how the Second Amendment, I think, should be understood. And again, this is my own theory. This is not based on any court cases. Professors, we can do this stuff all the time, right? We can just say, here's what it should be. The first facet, I think that the Constitution protects the right to acquire arms. And imagine a situation, right? The government says, okay, if you already have a gun, you can keep it, but you can't buy any new ones, right? No new guns, just keep what you have. So if you're young, you never had one, too bad. I think this would be problematic. I think at a minimum, a right to bear arms must mean there has to be some ability to actually acquire or obtain the gun. Now, of course, there can be restrictions on who can own them and background checks, etc. But there's a basic right, I think, to be able to acquire a gun. There's also a right, I think, to make arms. And this one I'm actually a little bit more confident about. long before gun stores existed, if people wanted a gun, they would have to make it themselves. And there's a very long, robust tradition of gun manufacturing in this country going back to the time of the American Revolution, which is why to this day, in basically every state in the country, it's legal to make your own weapon. And the feds have never tried to ban it, with narrow exceptions for machine guns and short-barreled shotguns and a few other items. So if there's a right to acquire arms and a right to make arms, I think the Second Amendment does some work here. And that's through what's known as a hybrid right. Okay? I'll give you an example. The state passes a law that says it's a crime to wish someone a Merry Christmas, right? An actual warm Christmas, right? Is that a violation of the First Amendment, free exercise of religion, or a violation of the freedom of speech, right? You can't say Merry Christmas. It's kind of both. There are many instances where the government doesn't actually ban two rights at the same time. I'll give you a more obscure example, right? The state passes a law saying it's a crime to publish books about how to perform an abortion. It's a violation of the right to abortion or the right to free speech. Maybe a little bit of both. Here, the government is censoring people from talking about how to keep and bear arms, right? They're censoring people to talk about ways to make new weapons. I think there's a double problem here. And the First and the Second Amendment reinforce each other, which warrants even greater scrutiny than if they were, say, to ban 3D printing, proteins, whatever else you guys print. Okay. So I think that's the basic constitutional sketch. Let's move on to where the law stands today. Believe it or not, Congress banned plastic guns 30 years ago, before most of you were even born, in 1988. Okay? They banned it 3 decades ago. Now, why? Congress passed a bill that said all guns must have a certain quantity of metal in them that will trigger a magnetometer. This law is on the books now. It's in effect. If you were to simply print the Liberator with only plastic, you'd be breaking the law. That's why the designs call for the insertion of a metal block into the handle, so it complies with the law, right? Again, purely 3D printed guns are already illegal, right? If it's all plastic, it's a federal crime. Why did Congress decide to ban plastic guns in the 80s? Because plastic guns aren't new, right? The 3D printing technology is new, but the ability to make plastic guns is fairly old. In fact, a lot of the fear about plastic guns stemmed from the creation of the Glock handgun. This is a very popular gun, which is made out of metal. People don't understand that. And I blame in part Bruce Willis. In one of the Die Hard movies, Bruce Willis has this line. He says, luggage, that punk pulled the Glock 7 on me. You know what that is? It's a porcelain gun made in Germany. It doesn't show up on your airport X-ray machines here, and it costs more than what you make in a month. Okay, every part of that's false, okay? There is no Glock 7, that model doesn't exist. It's not made out of porcelain, it's made out of metal. It's not made in Germany, it's made in Austria. It will show up in an airport X-ray machine, and they're fairly affordable. But people have these irrational fears of plastic guns and porcelain, like a teacup, I don't know what that would even be like, right? Porcelain guns that go far back. Again, a lot of this fear is quite irrational. So where does the law stand today? After my client, Defense Distributed, made big news, there were efforts by your senior senator to try to ban them. That didn't go very far. There have been some efforts say, well, we need to ban plastic, right? We have to ban the plastic used to 3D print. Well, guess what, folks? You can 3D print metal, like Terminator, right? You can 3D print a metal gun. This one is a 1911 handgun. Costs about $40,000 to print, not very effective, but you can 3D print metal. And again, metal will be detected anywhere. So I think these efforts to actually ban the printing will not go very far. So then how has the government come after my client? They've used what are known as export control laws, which you may never have even been exposed to them in law school. There's a series of federal laws and regulations called ITAR, which stands for the International Traffic in Arms Regulation, right? This is a series of laws that govern how we ship arms out of the country. So for example, if I want to send a Stinger missile to Afghanistan, right, I should probably get the government's permission first. I think that's a very good policy. If I want to send the blueprints for a nuclear submarine to China, okay, I should probably get the government's permission first. I think we're all on the same page here. But the government decided to apply ITAR in a very new context, not to classified, confidential, private documents that affect national security, but to public speech. The files that my client put on the internet were open source. They were inserted into the public domain. They were there for anyone to download for free. They were freely available. In 2013, the State Department sent a letter and said, you need to take down these files right now. That by putting these files on the internet, you are violating federal arms control regulations. Remove them from public access immediately. Okay? That began what's now been a 5-year litigation process, which I will walk you through now. Initially, myself and 2 other attorneys, we brought a lawsuit against the State Department. And we argued that the enforcement of the export control laws violated our clients' rights under the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, also some due process issues. That lawsuit floated around for a bit. The district court denied our preliminary injunction. The Fifth Circuit denied it. Again, we had a divided opinion. There was a good dissent. We sought rehearing en banc. We almost got the en banc court, but a couple of votes short in the Fifth Circuit. We then appealed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court denied review. Okay, and that was in 2016. We were sent back down to the district court. Okay, and the district court asked the parties to settle. Now, I was feeling pretty good at that time. We realized we almost won on preliminary injunction. We thought we had a better shot at summary judgment. But then the government said, okay, we want to settle this case. We will give you a license to publish these files, and we will change the rules such that anyone can publish these files on the internet. We thought, great, sign me up. That was the beginning. So I'll give you the end. We got sued everywhere. I had to argue 4 temporary restraining order motions in 5 days. Won most of them, but not the last one. Now let's walk through this step by step. The settlement was to go into effect on Friday. Dates aren't important. Friday was the settlement, and then Cody would post the files online the following Wednesday. That was the idea. We get the license on Friday, and then we build up some media and post them by Wednesday. On Tuesday of that week, we get this emergency letter. Various gun control groups filed a lawsuit against us. They sought to intervene in our case to block our settlement. They said, Judge, you can't let these parties settle. This will be really bad and harm national security, blah, 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 blah. Okay? So case number 1, I had to go down to Austin, Texas, and I argued this temporary restraining order. And I said, Judge, these gun control groups have no role in our case, right? The Brady campaign, Giffords, Everytown, Michael Bloomberg's various alter egos, right? They have no role in our case. And the judge actually ruled in our favor, and he denied the temporary restraining order. Like, yes, that's great. That day, on Friday, we got our license from the government. And I told Cody, we're going to get sued again. I don't know when, I don't know where, but they're going to sue us again. You put the files online right now. Don't wait till Wednesday. So we put the files online that night. And they started thinking, right? Who's going to sue us? Aha, Jersey, right? The Attorney General of New Jersey, a guy named Graywall, had been sending us these threatening letters over the summer. Like, this guy's going to sue us. And I said, you know what? He's going to sue us in state court, so we can't remove it. So I said, let's go on offense. So that entire weekend, I was actually in New York. I had a cousin get married on Long Island, and I spent that entire weekend drafting a complaint, which we're going to file on Sunday. And we're going to sue the New Jersey Attorney General in federal court in Texas. Go on offense, get him first. Okay, about 20 minutes before we had filed on our complaint against New Jersey, I get this frantic email. Pennsylvania. The Pennsylvania AG was suing us in federal court. He wanted a temporary restraining order to prevent us from posting the files. I called the lawyer up. I said, dude, we posted the files online already. What are you doing? He's like, wow, wow. They had spent a week writing a complaint to stop us from posting the files, and we did it anyway. They didn't even know. They didn't check the damn website. So then we had this oral argument. Now, you all know with oral argument, you prepare, you take your time. The judge called an oral argument on Sunday afternoon with 1 hour's notice. Where was Josh? LaGuardia Airport. I was doing an oral argument by phone at the United Lounge at LaGuardia Airport, which is probably the worst airport in the United States. And then I told the judge, like, look, judge, my flight leaves like in an hour. I got to go. So it's delay. I'm making my argument. And about 20 minutes before my flight leaves, says, okay, you know what? I'm going to deny the TRO. I was like, okay, cool. So far I was 2 for 2, batting 1,000, right? I knew they weren't done. The next day, New Jersey sued us, as I expected, in state court. Ready for this? They sued us in Chancery Court in Essex County, which is Newark. And they sought, I'm not joking you, in Chancery Court, they asked for a nationwide injunction to block us from putting files on the internet. So I had to spend all night preparing briefs in New Jersey. There's no electronic filing. It's basically by courier, right? It's by courier. And I filed that brief the next morning, and I had this argument. I said to the judge, Judge, he was a very good judge. I think he did the best he could. I said, Judge, with all due respect, I don't think a Chancery Court has jurisdiction to issue a nationwide injunction. And he said, you're probably right. Okay, he denied the TRO. I'm like, okay, good, Josh, 3 for 3. But then the big one. We got sued by 15 states, it was ultimately 20, in Washington and Seattle. And they sought another nationwide injunction to block our settlement. And I spent all day briefing this case. I had just been sleeping nothing at all, but I briefed this one also, and I argued it in the afternoon. And I said, Judge, this would be a violation of the First Amendment. There's a Pentagon Papers case, New York Times against, this is a really big deal. And the judge in Washington asked me one question and one question only. He said, Mr. Blackman, do you represent all the parties? Okay, what does that question mean? I'm going to rule against you, and I only want to have to write one opinion. So can I rule against everyone at once? Like, okay, great. And indeed, he ruled against us. He granted the temporary restraining order, and we lost. So I had won 3 TROs and lost the 4th, and that was it. I was done. So then I called my client. It was actually a very tough conversation, and I said to him, Cody, take down the website. It was very emotional. I started crying. It was very heartfelt, and he did. He wasn't happy with it, but he did. He complied. And then about an hour later, I was feeling pretty bummed, and my phone rings. And it was a restricted phone number. I'm like, oh God, what next? And who was it? It was Andrew Cuomo. Yes, your governor. He called me. He said, are you the lawyer for the gun guy? I'm like, yeah. He's like, you tell your client to take down those files. And I said, Governor, your attorney general sued me. She got a nationwide injunction. You already prevailed. He's like, well, she doesn't work for me. So he was complaining that the AG doesn't work for him. I'm like, well, what do you want me to do? I said, tell your lawyer to send me a letter. I'm not responding to a phone call thread. He's like, whatever. Then we started chatting for 20 minutes. I said, I'm from Staten Island. He's like, wow, your parents going to vote for me? I'm like, I don't know, I think so. And then we started chit-chatting for 20 minutes. So it's very, very serious business at the governor's office. But that was a long day. We ultimately lost. What's happened since? We went ahead with suing New Jersey and Texas. We're currently in appeal to the 5th Circuit. We also sued New Jersey in District Court in New Jersey. We are on appeal to the 3rd Circuit. And eventually, I think this case will get to the Supreme Court. Don't know quite when or where. But this is a significant issue that's not only about guns, but the specific question of how data should be protected by the Constitution. Thank you so much for your attention. I welcome any questions you have. Yeah.
The plastic gun, you said that they can ban short barrel shotguns.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't an argument be made that these plastic guns share all the attributes of a shotgun since they're unthreaded barrels? You could just make that cylinder slightly wider, like a 410 shell or something, and a sawed-off shotgun also doesn't have stock, just like the Liberator doesn't have stock.
I think you'd have to look at how the specific Liberator was manufactured. The definition of short barrel shotgun is pegged to a shotgun, which is based on the caliber of the weapon. Could Congress pass a weapon banning a handgun with a very short barrel? I guess they could. They haven't. Question. Yes, ma'am.
So you said the agreement was that on Friday they would issue the license, and then the following Wednesday you would post.
That was our initial plan. Yeah.
Okay. Was it not a problem that they issued the license and then you posted that night?
Well, once we had the license, we could do whatever we wanted.
Okay.
Cody wanted to have like a marketing thing, right, and like build up buzz. But once we had the license in hand, we were like, screw it. Put the files online now. It was, check the calendar, I think it was August 1st. That he's like, August 1st, right? The big thing, not like July 31st, like August 1st would be the big marketing thing. The key point is we didn't know what was going to come next, and we wanted to post the files. Why? With a preliminary injunction, one of the factors is there a risk of irreparable harm? And if the files are already out there, the judge would not be saying stop, he'd be saying pull them back down. And it's a much bigger thing for a judge to say take files down than for a judge to say don't put them up in the first place. So this helped our balancing of the harms.
Do you know like how many people that the code reached?
Thousands, thousands, and they're everywhere.
Like maybe even people like in China or wherever.
It's out. It's very difficult to put the toothpaste back in the tube, as the saying goes. You can Google right now and find the files in 5 seconds. They're not hard. In fact, one of my other clients is actually hosting these files right now, and we're litigating on their behalf.
So all you had to do though was take it down. There was no like time for the harm that might have been out there.
The judge didn't impose a fine. Had we not taken them down right away, he probably could have held us in contempt of court. But we took it down as quickly as we could, which is actually harder than it sounds. Cody had built a lot of redundancy, firewalls, backups. It took a while to actually dismantle all the structures that kept the website afloat. Thank you for the question. Other questions? Yes, Shannon?
Do you think it's more of an issue, or if it would change the issue if they're focusing on the human input or the human output? Like rather than focusing on the code, they're focusing on what people do once they create the code and have it done?
Well, I think that the state can probably ban the end product with one limitation, right? If the state says you can't have a purely plastic gun, I think I'm okay with that. If they say we want your gun to have a serial number, which we issue, I think I'm also okay with that under Heller. So as long as they let you make your gun at home with metal in it and has a serial number, I think I'm okay with that. But they can't ban the information that leads up to it, right? At what stage does the government intervene? I think they can ban the end product. They can't ban the person who shares the information in the first place. That goes a step too far. Yes?
So I have no idea actually how I feel about the question I'm actually going to ask you because I'm not familiar with this topic whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of teasing within the meaning of the First Amendment, and I feel like most of the cases that I'm familiar with that have to do with disseminating information for products or techniques or wreaking mayhem, whatever that can be dangerous, like the Anarchist Cookbook, or there was a case with I think a college published directions on how to make a nuclear bomb. And general thing is, number one, on the Anarchist Cookbook, it's like, well, it's just the information, and that can be speech, and it doesn't make you do a particular thing.
Mm-hmm.
For the nuclear weapon one, I believe the way they got around that was they said even if you had the information, you couldn't do anything with it anyway, because who can acquire uranium, right? So I'm wondering if there's a difference for the purposes of free speech in those cases where it's directions that you could just sitting here learn how to do something, you would have to engage in some sort of manufacturing process versus a file that if you opened it, it wouldn't necessarily mean anything to you in terms of directions, but then if you plug it into a machine, the machine can do it, and therefore it'd be more like a component instead of a piece of information within the meaning of the First Amendment. I don't know if that actually makes sense. So
It does. Very good. It's a very good question. I think the nature of the code matters. So at the beginning of the presentation, I showed you the cylinder, right? The demonstration. This is expressive, right? I can teach you in 5 seconds how to understand this code. You can visualize it on the screen. I think there's a difference between code that's visualized versus what might be called machine code, which is indecipherable to a human being. Because this code can be viewed, edited, modified, I think it has a much more expressive value, which is why it's protected. You also mentioned the questions about nuclear weapons. There's a curious carve-out in the law for classified information. It's not fully discussed in why is classified information differently, but it's different. This is public open source speech, which I think makes a big difference, right? People who get this file, they can often download it, modify it, and it's not point, click, shoot. There's a lot of work that goes into actually developing what materials you're going to use, what kind of plastic. It's a hard process that I think does have enough human intervention to put this on the side of the line of free speech. Wherever that line is, I don't know where exactly that line is. I think we're on the good side. Thank you for the very thoughtful question. Yes?
Out of curiosity, what is the use for these printed guns? Since it probably seems
They're
like
crap. They're terrible. Most people never actually print them. The overwhelming majority of people who download these files never print them because they're terrible guns. In fact, most people who do it actually Stick with the code. This code's been studied in graduate schools. They've displayed it at museums and art galleries, right? It's mostly a philosophical piece. It's not actually used for a functional firearm. They're not effective, and they're going to blow up in your hand after every one shot. They're not good guns. The panic and the fear by politicians about this is so disproportionate to the actual harm they inflict. So disproportionate. Oh, yes, in the back.
Is there an argument though, like for the government side to say, okay, these are like so dangerous, they're gonna blow up in your hand?
Like consumer safety?
Yeah, for your safety.
Again, I think the state could impose more regulations on the end product, the printing of it, right? My argument is just about the information. If the state wants to say you can't have a destructive device in your hand, that's better than banning the information used to get there. Okay. Once we get to the printing of it, I think my argument changes a bit. And we've not challenged the elements of New Jersey's law, for example, of actually printing it, creating it. It's only about the information to get there. Yeah.
This one's a little bit more dumb, but I know we said that it's not illegal to manufacture your own gun. Would you run into a problem of any penal law that has a statute for possessing an unregistered gun?
Yeah. Right, so if I make the gun and give it to you and you're possessing it in New Jersey and other states, you'd be in violation of the law.
What if you didn't give it to anybody?
How do you possessing it? I don't understand the question.
So I make it, now I have it.
Yeah, well, it's I mean, the New Jersey law is a crime to both manufacture and to possess. It's
Right, but not in New Jersey. So say you're in a state, so I don't know if New York has one of those laws, but we're taking criminal law now, so we have to do a lot of stuff with the New York penal law. You could probably fit a plastic gun within the meaning of, the statute that defines what counts as a gun or
Yeah.
a deadly weapon.
Yeah.
Gun. So say in New York, there is not a statute saying that you can't make your own gun, but there is one saying possession of an unlicensed firearm.
Yeah, that's fine.
So you're allowed to make your own and then still have it, even though technically it would be possession of an unlicensed firearm.
Oh, I see your question, right? So in most states, you can make your own weapon, right? And I think the possession statute would turn on whether it was a gun that was actually, in other words, okay, I get this question, at least if I can just re-explain it to him one more time. In most states, you can make your own weapons, right? Most states also have statutes prohibiting possession. I think the possession statutes apply to certain guns that require serial numbers, have to be licensed, and a gun outside that scope would not be subject to the possession statute. I think that's the answer to your question, if I got that right.
Yeah.
I'm thinking back to my one old crim.
It's like very facetious and just like thinking of a situation.
No, it's a good question.
It's not a crime for you to make it, but now that you get.
No, it's a good question. Thank you for that. What else? Other questions? Very good questions. Anything else? Going once? Going twice? All right. Thank you so much for your attention. I appreciate it.